Well, President Joe Biden has dropped out of the 2024 race for the White House, ending his re-election campaign after that disastrous debate with Donald Trump. Now, Biden's performance in that debate was so bad that members of his own team and his own party began vocally doubting his fitness for office. And that's just 4 months before the election in November. Now, we all remember seeing those clips. It was a disastrous debate. 81-year-old Joe Biden seemed unable, in some cases, to form coherent arguments. In fact, in more than one instance, there was a debate where either of these elderly men were discussing whether or not they were fit to lead the country, and it became a dispute about who is a better golfer. It seemed completely off the rails, and you get the drift. Now, after that, Biden continued to make a series of goof-ups. In one instance, he called the Ukrainian President Zelensky President Putin. And ever since that debate, senior Democrats have been calling for him to bow out of the race. In fact, last week's attempted assassination on Donald Trump distracted everyone for a little while, but the conversation then quickly came back to Biden's candidacy and whether or not he was fit to lead. It culminated finally in former President Barack Obama asking him to reconsider seriously after a COVID diagnosis took Biden off the campaign trail. In fact, Washington Post reports today that Biden has made his decision feeling certain that he had no viable path forward, but he's still extremely upset at Democratic lawmakers and other party strategists who had begun to publicly come forward and push him out. Now, all of this culminated in a surprise announcement on Sunday that apparently caught some of the members of his own team off guard. BBC reports today that senior White House staff members and officials only came to know about this decision moments before that statement was released on social media. In fact, Washington Post adds that Biden called his own Vice President Kamala Harris on Sunday, the day of the announcement, to tell her directly. Now, since then, Biden has announced that he endorses Kamala Harris for Democratic nominee. It was not part of his initial statement. He did put out a tweet saying that he wants to offer his full support and endorsement to Kamala as a nominee of their party. And Democrats, he said, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do it. If nominated, Kamala Harris will be the first woman of color and the first person of South Asian descent to be a presidential nominee and to fight for the post of president in the US at all. Now remember, the United States, unlike India or even Pakistan, has never elected a woman head of state. They've never had a woman president. Could this be their first? It's a long road for Kamala Harris. She has to first win the nomination within her own party, and that seems tough enough as it is. She has to formally secure nomination from around 4,700 delegates at the Democratic Convention that will be held next month in August, including those who have pledged Biden. So Biden's nominations don't automatically become hers. She'll have to win them all over again, as well as elected officials, former presidents, and other party elders known as superdelegates. Now, while Biden's endorsement carries a certain amount of weight, it doesn't dictate who will automatically become the presidential nominee. And also, reports suggest that the Democratic Party is keen to sort of make sure that they're following a process and it's not a coronation per se. So the Democratic National Committee Chair Jamie Harrison put out this message saying there will be no automatic coronation for a replacement. He said the party will undertake a transparent and orderly process to move forward and find a delegate and a candidate for the American people. Now, Biden's endorsement will stall some of the discussions on whether or not there is another candidate within the party who's better placed to take on Trump, because really it's winnability that's everything at this point. Until today, there were some concerns about Kamala Harris's ability to battle Trump and actually win. So Kamala Harris is at the top of the list as a choice for replacement, but she's always suffered low approval ratings and has had a fairly rocky run as vice president. Now, according to AP, on Sunday afternoon after Biden's announcement, Biden's campaign officially changed its name to Harris for President, suggesting that she will inherit his entire political operation of 1,000 staffers and a war chest of $96 million as it stood at the end of June. AP also reports that Harris's team has spent most of Sunday working the phones, as the Americans call it, locking down as many delegate votes as possible in the run-up to that convention. Now, doing his part, Biden also tweeted out that if you're with us, donate to her campaign here, suggesting that they wanted to raise more money. But as Biden tries to hand over the committee's millions to Harris, Republican lawyers are not sleeping on it. Now, apparently, they're preparing to legally challenge this handover, saying that the money that was raised by Biden under his name cannot be automatically transferred to Harris because there's no legal mechanism. They're actually suggesting that he's going to have to return all of that money and she will have to raise it all over again. Democratic lawyers are saying that anointing Harris would prevent any sort of legal headache because her name is already on the paperwork. So it's really a confusing situation right now for the Democratic Party between picking and anointing Harris or going the democratic way and choosing someone. Now, there are other options for that party as well. There are 6 names altogether other than Kamala Harris: California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and Arizona Senator Mark Kelly are all names that have been floated as possible replacements, who have all up till now been Biden supporters, and we'll have to see how many of them really endorse Kamala Harris. Some, including Whitmer, Shapiro, and Newsom, have already endorsed Harris so far. Now, there are other powerful Democratic figures: Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi. They've commented on Biden's withdrawal, but they have not endorsed Harris. One assumes that they are actually waiting for the final decision and they'll endorse that final candidate. Now, public opinion shows that Kamala Harris's approval ratings is about as low as Biden's. So in a head-to-head matchup against Donald Trump, she fares about the same as Biden, maybe a notch better in the polls. Harris has polled better, though, than the other Democrats who are currently the other 6 names that I told you about. But one has to take into consideration that these other 6 names have not really had all of these months of campaign, and they have not had the national recognition that Harris does so far. So it's a tough choice for any of them because they have not had the run-up that they would have had if they had this announcement slightly earlier. It's important to note also that Harris has already had a Democratic presidential nomination bid in 2020, and she sort of fumbled that one. BBC reports on that, saying that she surged early, but there was a combination of fumbled interviews and a lack of clear definition of vision, poorly managed campaign, and she had to drop out very early in the primaries. So this is where we are now. The Democratic National Convention will happen in a month's time, between August 19th and August 22nd. They're going to have to make their choice then. And the party has 2 options. This is according to the New York Times. They can either rally around Kamala Harris and show unity at a time of crisis, or they can choose another candidate because they don't want to be seen anointing a candidate and they want to follow a democratic process. Now, with many Democratic heavyweights vying for the job, the candidate who gets the majority will have to get more votes than all of the rest combined. And if nobody achieves this, it will go into something called a brokered convention, where delegates will act as free agents and negotiate with party leadership. There will be roll call votes based on names placed for nomination, and that, we understand, will be fairly chaotic. So what's happening on the other side? Well, when asked about Biden's announcement, Donald Trump said Biden should have never been there in the first place. In fact, Republicans are now calling for Biden to leave the White House right away, saying if Joe Biden is unfit to run for president, he's not fit to serve as president either. And this is House Speaker Mike Johnson, the most powerful Republican in Congress. Now, we understand, like I told you earlier, the Republicans are already prepared to attack Harris's candidacy because she's being seen as the most likely successor. So their legal teams are getting their paperwork together. Trump has told CBS News that he thinks, and I'm quoting here, she's no better than him. She could be far less competent, which is hard to believe, end quote. Finally, this is uncharted political territory for the United States altogether. Biden is the first sitting president who's eligible for re-election and who has declined to run since 1968 when Lyndon Johnson stepped aside. But what Biden has done is that he's the first to drop out so late in the campaign with just 4 months to go. Now, it's going to be a tough road for anyone, Kamala Harris or otherwise, from the Democratic Party to beat Trump, given how little time there is to build a campaign, especially if 1 out of those 4 months is going to be spent fighting internally to win the nomination. Now, Trump has already said he believes Harris will be even easier for him to beat than Biden. But we must step back for a second to realize that in this election, women's rights, abortion rights, trans rights, healthcare, climate change, Gaza are all on the line. So it's more than just the political careers of the people we just talked about. There are lives all over the world that will be impacted by who wins in November in the United States of America. Leave me a comment, tell me who you think is likely to be Donald Trump's rival in this particular election and who do you think is going to win. Also remember to like, share, subscribe, share our video, and if you can, do sign up for our membership and support us financially. Thank you for watching.